to be with you live on YouTube. I don't know why it didn't give me a chance to get comments. I see to you. I wanted to share something I thought was pretty cool with you, and so I'll share my screen. Oh, I heard this one when I was on my way home, so I wanted to share with you the armor of God. The reason for the whole armor of God is because you need it in order to withstand the spiritual pressures that you're going to face. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil, which is lived backwards, don't you know? Ephesians 6:11, I believe is what that chapter was. The full armor of God is what protects you when you have doubts, fears, and guilt. The way you stand against the accusations of the enemy is to believe what God's word says about you instead. Spiritual warfare is the term that some people use to describe this spiritual battle that Ephesians 6 talks about. The battle is real and can't be ignored, but so are the armor and weapons that God has already given to you, so you can stand against anything that comes your way. Effective spiritual warfare is not God-centered. Effective spiritual warfare is God-centered, not devil-centered. Spiritual warfare in the Bible is focused on God and what Jesus has done for you, and I encourage you to remember that Je suis with an I is when you have I am in French, and if you put that before Christ, you have I am not Christ, because the I is not included, so you idolize someone who lived before and said no more of the religions of the time, and so what did they do but made one about him, HYM, and do you see, the universe is just one song. Jesus and the apostles in the New Testament were not focused on the devil. Ephesians 6 does not talk about engaging with spiritual forces in the heavenly realms directly. Are there spiritual forces in heavenly places? Absolutely. Ephesians 6:12 even explains the spiritual hierarchy of the realm of darkness. The spiritual realm is real, but the way you engage and respond to spiritual attack is by focusing on God and on what Jesus has done for you. A wrong emphasis on spiritual warfare can lead to distraction, powerlessness, and confusion. If warfare is misunderstood or focused on demons, or trying to get other people to change, it's possible to use spiritual warfare as an excuse and not deal with the real underlying issues. For example, if there's a problem in your relationship with someone, you might want to just pray and do spiritual warfare to make it better, or to force the person to change. This is not what the Bible teaches. If it's a relational issue, you need to talk to the person in humility and with wisdom, not just pray and do spiritual warfare. In other words, you can't do Ephesians 6 armor of God without doing Ephesians 5. Living out the Christian life. Christ, I am not life, but Jesus, Jesus, just sweet has made available to you. This is how you engage in the spiritual warfare around you according to the Bible. Basic instructions before leaving earth I have heard. You've been blessed with every spiritual blessing. You are a child of God. You've been forgiven for all of your sins. Now you can go and stand in the face of this relationship. Challenge no matter what the outcome will be, and no matter how the other person responds. Hello, Jose Antonio. Great to be with you. You know you join in right now. There's a chair with the background out. Oh my God is a deliverer, and Jesus says the captives free. God delivers you from the bondage of sin and the power of it over your life. Call out to Jesus to set you free, and he will deliver you. Many people pray something like I take away my anger today. Then they feel bad that they got angry again in a few days. If it just stops at a prayer, then they're not receiving fully all that Jesus has made available to them. Jesus has so much more for you. He wants to restore you and transform you into his image. Self-image is the point of it all. Spiritual warfare is not asking God to take away your sin. Jesus did that on the cross. The Maltese cross is something mentioned in here. St. Germain on Alchemy, talking about focus of the distribution of energy from spirit to matter. Now can't you see? We've all got pieces of the truth around us, and it's time to put them together on the table where we can choose the power. In spiritual warfare is the cross of Christ and the blood that was shed there. How do you apply it to your daily life is what it means to put the full armor of God. Diego, it's great to be with you today. And you were dead in your trespasses and uncircumcision of your flesh. God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of doubt that stood against us with its legal demands. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him. H-Y-M-N. Where does the Bible talk about the armor of God? Ephesians 6:10-18. 1. The Oleanians 5:8. It's true. Romans 13:12 and Isaiah 2. Diego, it's great to be with you today. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas. Christ Mass, ho ho to You and yours. May we celebrate it, And so, Joyriding the Universe is actually what I'm going to be starting to read one chapter of per day, because there are a lot of pages, and I believe that that is manageable, and then means that you get to be read by me in the month of January, starting with The Old Board Gods. Yes, it is that kind of book. The grand gift and treasure of the body, the consciousness of the body. We're going to get back to the armor, which these are the 6 pieces of the armor of God. And this is what you will be doing by actually wearing those 6 pieces, which we are going to talk about when we get back to this page. But for now, I'm just going to say, a new breed of God is who we are, not because we need to replace the one that created all of us, but instead to say, what if we were the individuated expressions of the grand overall designer? And then we find out who is not cooperating, and they go. So that's just how that happens. I don't need to report you, Diego, but your sounds were not appreciated during an announcements. If you won't play and you won't show your face and you won't say anything other than not something productive to contribute, then you're taking. That's what we need to learn about ascension and the high rise of emotional awareness. And so I'm going to just check to see if there are any comments. Over on Facebook, there are not, except Michael says, Merry Christmas and back to you, Michael. Thanks. My friend Michael Badaway, first Christmas without you, my friend. It's a shame. It's a real shame when souls leave this place, and it seems to be happening at an ever rapidly increasing pace. And I would like to say the side effects of the genetic shift is what we're going to get into in 6 days from today. In fact, from mush into the butterfly, which is what happens when the RNA of the caterpillar changes its message to the DNA to make it be a butterfly instead of a caterpillar. And if you aren't familiar already, in fact, with a 2013 Supreme Court case that said it was in relation to the mRNA injections into things back in 2013, so not related to the certificate of vaccination ID AI at all, of course, but the evolution of man's brain is another piece, creating the beautiful space, core lifetimes, and the time-space medium, collapsing now to come fully present here. Whoa. I did also want to say that there is going to be weekly messages with the theme from The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. So each week we're going to have a look at this, which I actually read out online. If you missed it, you can watch The Spiritual Electricity, the Basic Principles on my YouTube channel under books, and you can listen to the whole chapter. So I can go back and I'll find all of those. So I'll make them available at the start of each week so you can listen to a chapter of Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. Then I'll read you a chapter a day of Joyriding the Universe. And I already actually have posted The Human Aura, book 1 by Katumi. So you can actually watch that, which I will send you if you sign up for my list on ljeh.ca. You can see album 22.2 there as well, which is the project we are working on, the conscious compilation with artists from around the globe that will not be due until July. So you have time to go on a journey inward in order to expand and change your energetic signature for the contribution you will make on this album. So 501 New Beginnings. Woo! Archangel Michael is here in the house. By the way, awesome. Sending love. So Saint Germain on Alchemy, I also just posted. So we've got book 2 and 3 in terms of the pillars of the teachings of the Ascended Masters that Michael Seegers introduced me to last year. We did a bunch of shows in the Michael and Laura show. I have come to my own understandings and BS. And so I am incorporating the game of syntax grammar, quantum syntax grammar, actually, all about staying in the now moment. And so I very much look forward on going on that journey with you each who choose to do that with me. And what I want to do right now is actually read 15 pages, and it's called The Old Board Gods. So most of you are actually old board gods. You have already matured through what you could learn in this existence, and much of what you deal with here are recycled issues that you healed eons ago. Let's put it into story form. There were all these young aspiring gods who were stuck in physicality who came up with a brilliant idea. They said to you, the old board gods, a lot of things are being set into motion. Let's help ourselves and the whole universe at the same time. Let's have a birth. That's what you are all doing. You're going to birth a new universe. So here you are. Here you were, these old board gods. You had already gone through your issues, and you did it before physicality was even an idea. You had issues. You had already graduated from some other school of manifested form. You had a manifested form already. You had gone through the lessons and you were sitting there half bored. These apprentice gods came up with a plan that sounded like a good idea because on the other side of it, you'll not be bored anymore. And boredom is actually the upper emotion of the negative spiral in the high rise of emotional awareness, which is based on Abraham, the consciousness channeled by Esther Hicks's emotional guidance system. And so boredom is literally at the top of the downward spiral of emotions that take you through the range of emotions that are trapped in a not now moment, down to depression, where you feel like you have no ability to change anything and feel completely helpless and hopeless. So these young gods knew that they weren't able to pull this off without your help. So most of you said, oh, we can do that. We've already been through all that. Now, the young developing gods thought that if they could get the help they needed, they could get out of physicality and orchestrate a birth of the universe. Additionally, they would be able to merge with 12 levels of creation and wisdom and be able to go back to their origins. They were really excited. You, the old guards, the old guards of the old world, interesting. You, the old gods, were tired and bored. You'd made a new planet today, and it didn't look a whole lot different than yesterday's. You had run out of new ideas. So when these young gods approached you and said, hey, you're our big brothers and sisters, and we have this brilliant idea. You're going to have fun with it. And you, the old gods, bought it hook, line, and sinker. We need some help, and you can do it better than we can. And of course, this was good for their egos. And of course, this was good for your egos, which you, of course, didn't have. So they told you the plan, and you were smart enough not to get stuck in it. You, the old gods, got guarantees and assurances from some of your friends that you would get out of physicality if you went into it. Most of you are under contract, and you're going home no matter what. So a lot of you came into physicality because these young gods had asked for your help, and you yourselves went to a higher court to ask for help with it. You asked for a contract so you could go through the terrible dead zone into the denser portions of physicality, losing your memory, and pull this grand and beautiful scheme off. Then you wanted to be pulled back out. You went around and contracted with all your different specialist friends because the young gods wanted your help. Now, the only thing the young developing gods really needed in physicality was life. The only things they really needed in order to pull all of this off were an added dose of joy, love, and excitement, and an intensity for life. A lot of you old gods said, oh, sure, we can do that, no problem. They knew you were bored, and they convinced you that you could take a vacation, go through the dead zone, and forget who you were. Then maybe you could get excited again when you got there. They hired you, the old bored gods, to put a love of life in here. That when this birth would occur, it would be a live birth. It would create a genesis and birth these young gods and yourselves into a new species of entity. Now, many of you were going to ride it through in your lifetime. These gods know that if the birth were created out of what is here, its success would be questionable because hardly anyone on this planet loves life and wants to live. There is no will to live here. Hey, speak for yourselves. Hopefully not the case. If you got some will, leave it in the comments, because right now we're under direct attack, my friends. It's no laughing matter, in fact, but you got to deliver it a little lightly. Because if you send the Joker, then when you get what the Joker warned about, then they say, well, we warned you. You didn't listen. So ignorance is not bliss. It actually comes with liability and culpability. Oh my. Yes, I know. Divergent. Okay. There is no will to live here. For some. Your attitudes have been bored and hopeless. For a live birth, you need a will to live and a strong love of life. That's why you hired on. Most of you from childhood have sensed a purpose or mission to your life. You knew you were here for a reason. Your reason was to come here and put love and joy into the place. It was to come and have fun, live life, be excited, and you all volunteered because it sounded so good. So most of you are old gods that can make anything you want. A planet, a minute if you like. All of your concerns and issues here are really no big deal. But since you're here, you like to play the games that everyone else is. You like the game of struggle because underneath it all, you're still bored. You still say, life isn't that much fun, not that exciting. I'm not having that much joy. But that is what you were hired to do. A lot of you, by your natural vibrations, are doing it, and other people around you can feel it, but you don't. You thought that it would be an easy job, but it is a hard one because life and joy aren't here. The people don't want to live. That's why you were asked to come to instill life in the planet. You see, your system of reality here is a hodgepodge of everything that has ever existed since the origins, and the origins are further back than you have any idea. If we started with the number 35,000 and put a billion zeros behind it, everything you have become started further back than that. You are a recent addition. You are also a homogenization and coagulation of everything that has been before you. Your bodies contain within them the knowledge of everything that has ever existed anywhere. You are being held in a womb, the mind of a creator source. I was just thinking that it was still streaming. You're in the waiting room. Ray, I don't see you. Barry, it's great to see you being here. Oh, hi, sorry. Okay. You're in the waiting room. Hello, it's great to be with you. Ray, is that you? Cooper Green, how have you been?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Amazing. Who do we have here? Is it Ray? You can shoot me a message over on the chat there if you are not comfortable speaking. I totally get that and appreciate you for showing up. And if you've got questions that come up as we go, type those into the chat. And also, if you wonder what we're reading, it's Joyriding the Universe, Snapshots of the Journey. Remembering that joy starts and ends the journey, and you get a yearn or an urn in the center when you take out the J and the O and the Y, which means that there's death or joy. So let us choose joy. And it's great to be with you. And this really is just me giving updates. And then I'm going to be reading a chapter a day from this book to get through it. And so I'm actually just reading you the very first chapter called The Old Board Gods. So it's basically telling you that you came here because they hired you, the old board gods, to put love in life here because it's so lacking. So you are the joy in so many of your people's lives is the premise. So that's super fun. No, I don't know why on YouTube it didn't give me the option to have a live chat room. So I'm sorry, I am shadow banned there. So when you speak truth, they call you a whistleblower, the archetype. And ultimately, I can whistle. So maybe it's true. We'll go with it. 511. Embrace things, but don't take on the status. You cannot call me a whistleblower because that is a status I do not consent to. However, you can call me a woman that whistles. I don't mind that, because if we stand as a woman or a man in our private capacity with all common law rights reserved, common law being the land that we walk on before we walk on someone else's jurisdiction and have to play by their rules since it's their game, No, if we stay in common law, that's our common territory without any titles, because a title is a suit, which is not a standing, which we do with our legs. It's a status. That's why it's all about your different statuses that you're asked about. It's very intentional because those are public interfaces, just like the accounts that you're watching me through. Those accounts are based on my statuses online. It's not a reflection of me, the woman, that gets myself in front of the interface that brings me to you and you to me. So if you're here with me, would love to know where you are in this world. Merry Christmas Eve to you. Christ Mass. What does that mean? I'm not quite sure, but I've been digging. So I'm going to get back to the old board gods, of which you are allegedly one, because I do believe that we are here to become the ascended masters that other stories are written about, because we chose to live our life in a way that made others say, hey, I could learn from him or her. And so that's when our life began to really matter, when someone else started using our life as an example, as a template for them to live a better life. So you see, your system of reality here is a hodgepodge of everything that has ever existed since the origins. And the origins are further back than you have any idea. If we started with the number 35,000 and put a billion zeros behind it, everything you have become started further back than that. You are a recent addition. You are also a homogenization and coagulation of everything that has been before you. Your bodies contain within them the knowledge of everything that has ever existed anywhere. You are being held in a womb, the mind of a creator, source. You are being held in consciousness. You don't have just one source, or is, as we will call them. The source has a progenitor, who has a progenitor, and so forth, just like your pedigrees. In this system of reality, you've never been exposed to the energies and growth potential of more than 3 generations of Ises who helped with the creation and support of this universe. At this time, you have windows lining up so that the next 9 Ises beyond this are going to put their vibrations in here for the very first time. That is going to create a species shift, and your bodies are going to make a biological change. Ooh, interesting. All right. You see, your planet is the nucleus of it all. It is a star with an extra R, or a nucleus that clones itself to make a new cell. Your planet is a star maker for a universal birth. It is cloning itself, but you are in the stage where the 2 cells or planets are still connected. Now, the idea was to build up the intensity and life in this new cell, shove it off from the other, and collide and merge with all the wisdom of the incoming Ises. On the other end of this, you would become a grander species having the knowledge of everything in manifested existence since the beginning of time, plus the knowledge of the next 12 Ises. You'll do all this in 3 seconds, and it will be the biggest bang ever. So this was the brilliant idea these juvenile gods came up with. Of course, it was passed on to them from other places. Everyone wants to take credit for it now. Then it was a dumb idea. In all this, the planet has to have enough thrust going out to create a hole in the fabric of the womb of this universe, push through and birth. But at the same time, the mind of your source is going to close down. Everything within this womb, including you and your planet, will be reduced to a single cell and shoved through time and space and Genesis into a new universe. The only problem is that it doesn't want to live. You see, in this single cell, you have every possibility, every probable reality, everything you've ever thought, but never followed through on, everything that ever existed, and it wants to die. There is no will to live in it. If you punch this out of the womb, it's just going to fizzle. You'll have a stillbirth. You have to make it want to live. You were hired to have fun, good times, to enjoy life, to get excited and find the miracles, to see the marvel and wonder at it. All of that will imprint the inside of this medium so that when it closes down, gets pushed through and touches the medium of Genesis, it will say, I want to live. Then you have a system that is going to grow like crazy. It's going to be totally different than this one, but it will be created by this one. That's what you are all part of. It's kind of hard to love life and yourself and have lots of fun when you don't have self-worth hormones. And right now, your bodies don't have them. You have to want them in order to make them. You see, your DNA is a double helix, a twisted ladder of nodules. There are 3 strands that must be together in order to make you love life, love yourself, and feel good. If these 3 are in place, you have self-worth, you have love. You also have to put life into this body, and it will keep on living even if you leave it and put it in the grave. So these hormones or strands in your DNA were not given to the body because it would be a cruel thing to do to it until you yourself wanted to live. It was put into motion that when you love yourself enough, you would grow them. Presently, you are working at growing these rungs. This is going to start putting the life hormone in your body, so anything you don't like is going to grow as well as the stuff you do like. Your guilt will be pushed to the max, and all this stuff you don't like can get bigger than your life if you let it. But if you are loving yourself, if you like who you are, what you are, that is going to be bigger than life too. Whatever you're focused on is going to be grown. Once you are beyond your guilt issues, you'll be able to do in a short time what would take the species 1,000 years to do genetically. If you maintain your guilts, your bodies have 10 to 20,000 years of evolution left before they can hold a god in them. It works the same way that the birth and the planet that has been cloned. You have to choose which one you are going to live in. You see, when your bodies reproduce and clone new cells that are not as healthy as the cells they replace because you don't let enough light in. But that's not the way the universe works. When a universe clones itself, it dumps off the residue that is too dense and too heavy. In the universal cloning process, the new is always bigger, brighter, and more beautiful than the old. That's how the universe works. So in consciousness, you're going to have to choose which nucleus you're going to ride on. It's going to stay stable for a time. Planets are not going to separate yet, and you're going to choose between the two. You're either going to be stuck in your density, stuck in your fear, stuck in all your pain, stuck in struggle and stress on the old side, or you'll be on the new planet, out and out of those things. You have to have both sides for the birth to occur. The dense part anchors the other and provides catapults. Everybody is going to go, but you will determine how far you will go according to your attitude. To create critical mass for this birth or shift, you need only a slight percentage. But that percentage has to want joy and life. You've got to put in the passion and intensity before it occurs. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for who knows how long for it to set itself up again, and most of you are already too bored to face that again. Shut Up is trying to enter the room. It feels very satirical, if that's the name. Before we carry on, we'll just see what your... How's it going, Shut Up? How's it going? Are you going to speak? You're good? What's with the name? If I was looking to be offended, I would be. Good thing I'm not. That's a little voice behind you. Sorry. I would prefer if you didn't have guilt, because that's what we're learning about right now. How old's the little girl in the background there? Is that your little sister? Have a merry, merry Christmas. I hope you're having a great day. And if you've got a little one in the background, please send them my love today. It's great to be with you. Someone was messing my computer while you're here, and I'd like to know your real name. If you want to play, that's fine. But if you're going to disturb the old board gods, then I'll say no thanks. So please, if you want to stay, do. Just be rude, or don't be rude, or we'll have an issue. But if you're respectful and you've got questions and you like what you're hearing, stick around. Cooper! Hey, hey, hey! I like it. Nice to have you here today. You and your little sister too, if that's who's in the background. All right, listen up, Cooper. To create critical mass for this birth or shift, you need only a slight percentage. This is called the tipping point, which is what handstands taught me. And I could maybe do a handstand after the chapter if you stick around. But that percentage has to want joy and life. They've got to put in the passion and intensity before it occurs. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for who knows how long for it to set itself up again. And most of you are already too bored to face that again. Boredom is at the top of the high rise of emotional awareness. Passion is the P of Peaceful Inner Warriors United, which is a group on Telegram that you are welcome to join in. I'm just going to get the name of that so that if you wanted to join in the conversation, you would be able to do that. I'm glad that you chose to come on here today. Feel free, Cooper, to join there. And I don't know how old you are, but the little voice behind you sounded pretty young. So whether that's your sister or whether that's your daughter, or just a little one, it's very important what goes in our head, because this is the real estate that's being fought for. And it's being sold far too cheaply because people don't know what they're worth, which is what all this is about. So the rush of riding this birth through will be the most exciting thing that you have ever experienced. This will be my third birth, and I guarantee it will be the funnest thing you're going to find in the universe, and they don't happen very often. The ride through is worth anything you have to do to get there. Universally, this is a big bang. A universe is going to be born, and this comes around in years. And this comes around in terms of years, once every 35 million, within another million zeros behind it. And a live birth occurs only once in every 10 of these cycles. That's how long you're going to have to wait if you don't pull this one off. So if you don't learn to have fun and enjoy life now, you have a long time to learn how to do it. I'm teasing, but I'm serious about the time schedule. All you have to do is learn to enjoy life now. That's it. You'd think that it would be easy, yet it's the hardest thing to do. Now, I'm kind of old, but I can claim being young because I was birthed again and again. I've done about everything in the universe you can think of, and nothing compares to the birth process. In the universe, there are different species of entity. You are the one species of entity, but there are a lot of species, and I'm not talking about alien brothers. I'm talking about species so abstractly different than you that it's not just the way they look. They have a different function. They run off of different physics principles. I have faces in all of them. I have had a good time. I've had a grand time. In my stories, I talk about the young gods, the middle gods, and I talk about the old bored gods. I use the word God because it's what you relate to in your terminology, but they are all quite different species in and of themselves. I've experienced them all. In the universe, gods merge. I have merged with levels of consciousness, and it is better than anything you have here. I mean, it's real good. I've been just about everything, and I still love the thrill of birth. Merging is grand. You are taking you and your entire body of knowledge and you're merging it through another. It is the most fulfilling and complete sharing you can ever have. But in a birth, you are doing that with thousands upon millions, amplified by the energies coming in. It is beyond comprehension. It is fantastic. Most of you have never been through one. Those who have work at trying to create a new birth and to accelerate evolution. I would say that a birth is guaranteed to be the most thrilling thing you've ever gone through. You will never find anything like it. I would say that the level that I am talking now, I am also where I have even grander parts of me that are yet unable to come in, because at the same time where I am and where I come from are outside this womb. So I give you stories and metaphors because that is the easiest way to explain who I am. Long before your universe and what you know as biological life was created, you had lots of old gods. Now, these old gods had young gods going to college and doing projects. There was one young god that was particularly ambitious and, by some perspectives, a bit of a headache. This young god was an old face of me. How's that for a paradox? This young god decided he wanted to get straight A's. He was an only child, so to speak, and he didn't think his parents liked him very much because they ignored him all the time. He had all the usual complexes that go with that. This young god got a brilliant idea in his head one day. He decided for his class project, in order to graduate from God school, he was going to do something so outlandish that he would get some attention. He was kind of insecure, I think. Now, most gods or entities create like you do. One thought leads to another. That's how you create. But there is another species in the universe, and there are only 3 of them known to exist. I call them space particums because I don't know what else to call them. They are a species independent of everything else. They can go anywhere they want and create totally spontaneous ideas that hinge on no other reality whatsoever. It is the ultimate form of creativity. They are one of the smallest particums you will find, and if one wanted to create right here, it would ignite in a moment, expand out, and create a webbing. As it collapsed back in, it would move to the next place it chose and create again. It just creates webs for life to grow on. From that, sources spring. They are the most spontaneous, independent, originally creative things there are, and I was jealous. Gods can't create that way. Nobody knew where space particums came from, how to make one, or how to catch one until I caught one. And then I got in really big trouble for it. So this young god wanted to create something so radical he could get some attention. But as he watched the creations of the old gods, their mistakes, blunders, and successes, to get ideas for his project, he couldn't figure out what he was learning from the old gods was going to help him learn to create like a space particum. He envied the space particum. If you could create like that, you would never be bored because it was so radical that nothing could interpret it. Sounds like myself in the conversation my mom and I were having about me this morning. You would have to try to interpret it from outside the creation, and that could take eons of time, and that is where the fun came in. He really wanted to be like the space particum. He wanted to be that creative, so he watched all the endeavors of the old gods. Now, gods, whether old or young, go into sleep cycles. They have to respirate. Sources, on the other hand, are a different species, and they just source raw material, knowledge-based love stuff, but they cannot think. If a source thought for 1 second, it would destroy itself and collapse the universe. Sources and creators are separate. They have always been separate. The source can source the raw material, but if it focuses on itself, it will forget to source the raw material for anything else, and it will fall in on itself. If you have encountered one, it would be the most beautiful experience you have ever had. After the source sources, the creators come along and organize this love stuff and put it on the webs that the space particum left in place. These webs are the same as grid systems, and on them, things can grow and coagulate and create life. So this young god was watching the creators. They looked rather boring because they had always done what they were doing. You don't get new creativity that way. All you do is wait and see what develops from one idea leading to another, to another, to another. That's why you get bored. You don't have something new to give you oomph. Now, gods have to sleep. They have to respirate. They have to sleep, go into the source, pull out the raw material, come back, come out, and organize it. That's the way they work. But they can't take their persona into the source. If they did, it would destroy the source. So they use a principle called the physics of self. When they let go and become the whole universe, they retain a single compressed self, C-E-L-L, cell of themselves that pulls them back out. They become the universe. They become the source, and this nodule then pulls them back out, pulling the raw material out of the source to create from. Self is a physics principle that allows them to go into the source and then be pulled back out without totally obliterating themselves. These creators do this on a 35,000-year cycle. That's as close as I can translate it into your time frame. And this young god watched these cycles and how the gods always improved the new clone of themselves. He was trying to learn from the mistakes of his elders so he didn't make the same ones. He realized as he watched them that they always sloughed off major pieces of themselves. All the old stuff was thrown away into the respiration. When they were pulled out of the respiration, they had all the new material with which they rebuilt themselves. The old was thrown away. So this young god realized that if he could pick up all of this residue, the waste material of the gods, maybe he could do something with it. Since it was the garbage or the junk, maybe it held the answers to all the mistakes and possibly the cure for boredom. So he went around and collected it from all the sleeping gods he could find and started storing it, which got him in trouble. These gods realized that even though they weren't in it or using it, it was still valuable stuff, and besides, they considered it as if it were radioactive waste. If someone was making a radioactive waste dump in your backyard, you'd get a little upset too. And they were afraid that pulling that much waste into one corner of the universe might destroy the universe. So a council was convened, and the young upstart was denounced as the worst thing that ever happened to the universe. They didn't want anything to do with his harebrained schemes. They said the time had come to put him out of business. But the elders of the old gods were also at the council, and they stood up for the young god. All he wanted was either to learn from the mistakes or to be able to find new possibilities and potentials that the older gods had missed. So the elders prevailed and said that if the young god would protect the universe from his collection, So the elders prevailed and said that if the young god would protect the universe from his collection and his experiment from the rest of the universe, they would let him play around with it. But the moment it got out of hand, they were going to pull the plug on it. In truth, the project has not had support from the beginning. The young god then took the major portion of his own being, making an electromagnetic womb out of his own consciousness, and started holding it. He was not afraid of it, and he told them that he would hold it so that it would destroy him before it could harm them. Now, this young god didn't know what he was going to do with it. He figured he was going to learn from it, and that probably he would get into more trouble for it. Now, if you're a god and you don't want others to know you have a thought, you just kind of blank it off, and they never know you have it. It's the same principle you use here. He knew that if he could change his focus a little bit, take another part of his consciousness and put it to sleep around what he had picked up, nobody would ever find it, and he would stay out of trouble. Now, the stuff that he was holding was just information, just something to be organized. He was trying to protect it from the gods who wanted him to destroy it. So if he put any thought process in it at all, they'd find it. Since large portions of himself were asleep, not even he would know where it was. He would say it was gone, and so he hid it. With the remaining portions of his consciousness, he started trying to figure out what he could do with what he had. But since he had already closed himself off from what was inside, he had no idea of what was going on. He had found a very small particum in the universe with which he breached this womb ever so slightly. Through the breach from outside the womb, he could peer in to see what was going on. But if he put his thought in there, the other gods would find it. So he didn't put his thought in there, but separated off more pieces of himself and pushed them through, just like amniocentesis, the process of piecing and exploring a mother's womb. He pushed them in with prime objectives to find out what could be done with what was there. Originally, he took 5 pieces of himself. Merry Christmas, Chris! Amazing! Haha, sweet. Okay. Originally, he took 5 pieces of himself, and this is where my story begins. The first one he pushed in, we'll call it P or Philip. It means origins. Its prime directive was to go inside the nodules and find their origins. The second, or A, we call address or Andrew. It was pushed in to search for life, to give life, and to create a passion to live. It was to try to see if it could get something to live in here. The third was the D, or David. The line of David was the face that was to go in and organize, make the myths, the legends, and the stories that would organize this all into some semblance of reality, so that eventually the project could be presented. Next, since the creation was finding itself to be unbalanced inside, was the L for Lima. The L was the peacemaker, spelled both ways. It was peace. It was peace, as in chopping up, severing, separating it in order to see what you could get from it, and pieces in harmony, balance, and flow. He figured that with all these pieces of himself out there, he could work together and figure something out. They could work together and figure something out. The last, which was also the first, was called K. It was the amniocentesis itself, a bridging energy that would allow him to keep track from outside what was going on in the interior. Once all this was inside, it still had to be closed off again. It was just as a baby in the womb. You may have an idea, but you don't know what it's going to be until it comes out. You can't go in and check on it personally. These pieces themselves were not inside the womb, but rather vibratory emanations of them that had been translated through the layers of the womb. Now, this God knew that in its own process of respiration, everything inside would get a ride. So it went to sleep and went into the source or universal heart. Elder gods know what sources are and understand their process of respiration, so they organize themselves around sources. Then you have a huge universal heart, the source of all life, because you're going to have lots of large gods sharing one heart. They don't all sleep at one time because they support each other. This young god was really an old god connected to a shared heart, but he didn't know it. However, the old god was aware of his younger self, and in fact, it was he that had orchestrated the younger god in his harebrained schemes. Now, this old god went to sleep in its respiration, knowing that his project was safe and that when he woke up, he could figure out what to do with it. In the meantime, during the process, as he went into the source, he forgot that he had breached the womb of his consciousness. Now inside, gods were forming and gaining identities out of the refuse. These became most of you, the old, bored gods. You were the tired part, sloughed off in the respiration. Now these gods that were forming got curious when stuff from this source started leaking through the breach. They loved it. It was a sort of clouded euphoria. It was great. They decided that if they could take this stuff and split it up into a bunch of little pieces, they could shove those pieces into their projects and then see what came out of it. This stuff was wonderful. It made them more alive than anything. It was life to them. This had to be the source of all life. They thought they had found the origins of the universe. So they took this love stuff and broke it into pieces. They then scattered it to create life for their creations inside. When they did, all these little lifeless junk particles that had been picked up and held started coming to life. This formed the new young developing gods. You see, at this point in time, these gods that were forming inside of the womb were oblivious to the fact that they were parts of the source or God that was holding them. They had gone through the big forgetting, so they just played around in here with ideas. They would try them on for size, making and cutting holograms in the space with the different ideas. Then, when they weren't looking, this life stuff and the space junk started coagulating onto the holograms, and a form of life started happening within the womb. Inside the womb, layers started forming, each trying to gain closer access to the love stuff. This created rapid organization of the layers inside the womb. The old bored gods were created. The true source of this creation's origins was asleep and holding it, and that source came out of its sleep not too long ago in your present time. In that process, it was never able to see what was going on, and it couldn't put its head inside to look without destroying it, because if you take a personality into a source, it will distort it and destroy what it is holding. This god realized that what he had created was a sterile medium, because his project had no thought processes from him. This meant that he, for a god, had gotten as close to creating like a space particle as anybody ever had, because there was no way of knowing what the creation was going to be. In the process of this god's sleep, all sorts of things occurred inside: hierarchies, systems, realities, planets. This is one of the few universes where there are planets. That is how abstract some of these other realities are. This god was outside feeling the pushing on the edge of the consciousness from inside the womb, which began to wake up. It knew that what was developing and incubating inside was grand because it was getting some messages through the breach, but it had no idea what it was. So it put another layer of itself to sleep, to hold that layer and another layer and another layer just to protect itself from waking prematurely. This created the generations of ises and faces holding this reality from outside the womb. It knew the moment it awakes completely, it would close down to a single cell and create birth. Anything that is not it is going to get shoved out, and that is when you have birth. But it's not quite ready for that yet. The stuff inside has to want to live. You could say that this God is all this layers. You could say that this God is all these layers that create and make up the outside of this womb. These layers are his faces, and this is where I come from. I am the faces as well as the owner of the consciousness that makes up this womb that is holding this reality as it plays. The faces that were originally projected into the womb have split and incarnated. The original ones were very strong entities because they were core gods, but they split and split and split far enough to get subatomic structure, mass, and matter. The A strain is dead except inside the womb, and most of what is here has been corrupted and closed off. That is the passion for life. The L strain also exists where no one else but inside the womb, and it too is rare. The L strain also exists where the L strain also exists nowhere else but inside the womb, and it too is rare. So if this birth is pulled off, these gods will be resurrected, so to speak. If not, they cease to exist for all eternity. The P was the first one in, and it went scouting for origins to see what needed to be created. Then it called for A, the L, the D, and the K. They stayed together for a while, after which they fractured into large pieces and then separated and homogenized into waste nodules. You are the experiences out of all these gods. Now, with all these extra layers that have been created to hold this universe while you play, and as you gain a desire to exist as individuals, along with your steady growth and expansion inside of it, you were taking up too much space. So this god was told that he had to go on a diet or wake up and close down because others wanted some of the space. Space is limited because you can't create space without a space particum, and you can never tell where they are or when they are going to do their thing. Push the fabric and create. So the council told the god to go on a diet, but they didn't know what he had been growing, for eons. So he fessed up, and they said that since it was junk anyway, dump it. But he protested that there was something growing inside, alive and viable, and he said he wouldn't dump it. They put a bunch of stipulations on him, and he said, I can't do that because I gave it free will. I wanted creativity out there. I wanted creativity out of it. Free will is what the sterile medium was all about. You can do anything you want and be protected and have the universe protected from you all the same. And be protected and have the universe protected from you at the same time. All this has been going on inside here and outside, and now when you are very close to being able to pull this off, they want to pull the plug on the experiment. And so at that point in time, there were arguments and arrangements and different things happening. A council was called, and some of the members had actually participated in the experiment. The council was going to determine whether the experiment was going to continue. It's not that they were going to pull the plug, so it's nothing that you have to fear. Remember, this is a story to approximate something that is quite abstract. At the same time, these young gods inside saw some windows lining up. They realized that if they could line them up and stir up a fuss, they could pull the entire council in them, smack them with their life force and creativity, and prove their value and validity from within. Then they could gain at the same time the force and movement they needed to pull off the birth. This is a mass event. This is where your images and pictures and stories about mass ascensions, people just popping off the earth, come from. The word went out that a project was growing, and some of these other board gods wanted to come in and figure out what was going on. So it's inspection time. That's why you have entities on the inside telling you you'd better get your act in order. But there is nothing to worry about. You're such a novelty that even if your act wasn't in order, they'd still leave you alone. You are a creative endeavor. When this started moving, when enough of you started screaming to get out, you set up a resonance that finally started waking up these layers. My job from the outside is to make good the contract some of you hold that assures your ride home when the time is right. This contract assures that no matter what, you will go home. Many of you have had a knowingness about that since you were very young. You've always known you were going home at this time. You've always known you were going home this time. You came here to have joy and live life. This will give the new universe the life it needs to create a most beautiful birth. My portion of it all is timing and orchestration. I keep track of what is going on outside the womb and inside the womb from this layer. I have many faces inside and have incarnated 85,000 times and loved it. I have ascended 960 embodiments. Some of my faces, just like some of yours, have gone haywire. I still love them. Others of those faces are very beautiful, very intricate, very important parts, because this is a project that everybody is involved in, not just one or two here and there. You've had teachers through the eons, and their main job has been to teach you to love yourself and to know you exist. Most of you don't understand free will. While you're held in the womb, you couldn't die if you wanted to, not permanently. The greatest free will you are going to be given ever is the free will to exist or not. Granted for the first time, this is the ultimate act of free will and unconditional love. It will be self-selected and chosen. So through the ages, there have been many teachers with one message: love who you are. I am. I exist. Now you can look at yourselves as being made up of a lot of waste products, and that might help you understand why you don't like yourselves, because you were originally rejected. But if you do like yourself, then that's great, because you are getting the refuse to like itself. That's a pretty fair achievement. That's a pretty fair accomplishment by any standards. But a lot of you don't realize that you are a whole lot more creative than a lot of gods that have come along for a long time. It is because you were left to run free and wild inside here. Everything you ever thought, any possibility you ever came up with, can be a reality in the new universe. You know how your hawks and eagles soar? How many of you have ever tried to become one? In the new universe, you're going to have flowers that can feel, trees that can think, and birds with your intelligence, because it was a possibility you gave them here. The rose that smells and feels so wonderful when you touch its petals. You're going to have roses that can feel you back. You are a lot more creative through your ignorance than you would have been with someone telling you what to do. You are very literally the creators of the new universe because no one else has participated in it. You know how you feel when you are trying to create something and you have a million thoughts running through your head, so many that you end up not doing anything. The new you in the new universe will be able to do every one of those thoughts with ease. Here, you have a dead zone and a separation. You use your dead zone for your atmosphere and gravity. That is what gives you the friction to stay in orbit. But you never knew you had a dead zone. So your next universe won't have one. Your desire to live forever, those in the next one will be able to do so with ease. All of your dreams will be birthed there as potential. Here, the best you can do is to make a hologram and hope you fall into it. There, the inhabitants will be the gods that you dream of being. Whew, how cool is that? Our dreams, our desires will be what we give birth to in the next reality, this is saying, which was chapter 1 of Joyriding the Universe, Snapshots of the Journey by Sheradon Bryce. So really looking forward to reading one chapter every day. Jonathan, Merry Christmas. So happy to join you for story time. Love it. So glad you could. And we're going to also be starting in January a weekly theme from The Artist's Way. So we're going to go through the 12 chapters. And each week you can listen to the audio. I've already read it out earlier in the year. So you can read out the chapter and get some of the techniques for recovering the artist within, starting with safety, recovering a sense of safety. Week 2, identity. 3 is power. 4 is integrity. 5 is possibility. 6, recovering a sense of abundance. Week 7, recovering a sense of connection. Week 8, recovering a sense of strength. Week 9, recovering a sense of compassion. Week 10, recovering a sense of self-protection. Week 11, recovering a sense of autonomy. And week 12, recovering a sense of faith. That we're going to go through. And then also, I have just uploaded the Human Aura has been up for a couple months, and now we've also got Saint Germain on Alchemy. So these 2 books I was introduced to through the teachings of the Ascended Masters. They are channeled by Elizabeth Clare Prophet, and it's with Summit Lighthouse or Summit University Press. So I say just feel the truth that comes to you and let that be enough. Interestingly, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford, I picked up at a car boot sale when I lived in England and read it on a flight to Florida for a John Maxwell team conference. And the story of the inner kingdom that I often use about the child therapy of the child reintegration therapy literally came from that book. So The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford. And what was on top of that as a sticky note, it was, when I follow my passion, I am able to offer greater compassion, compounded passion, extended to others, giving from our overflow, which is what we really need to do. So in case you were interested in putting on the armor of God, I'm just going to share the description for the link if you want to go check out the rest of it. And I'm going to say it's been an hour today, Christmas Eve, Christ Mass Eve. I shared with you my belief that Jesus, you can call him Je suis, if you want to own and claim the I am that you are. And then come on a journey with me into the artist's way of creating quantum syntax grammar. I'm going to share you what I got from that. And also we've got a story that is about the monkey mind of the conscious. The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. This is the first mastermind group I ever got certified to be able to teach with the John Maxwell team. The first law is the law of the lid, which is another way of looking at self-image. And I just flipped over to the law of addition, which is really about adding value instead of taking. So being a giver, not a taker, but also being a giver that knows how to receive. That definitely matters too. So all of this, I hope, resonates for you and that you'll be willing to come on that journey with me. It's 5:55 right now on Christmas Eve 2021, and I am on Boxing Day hosting an Unboxing Day special at 10:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You are welcome to join me live, and I very much look forward to hearing from you as to what this message means to you, what it means for you, what you're going to do with it. We will be looking at the interface in terms of the personage and what it means to be a man or woman in our private capacity with all rights reserved, so that we can step out of the box and let the walls that used to keep us safely separate actually be what we walk over to connect with one another as men and women and really turn this madness around. So thank you for tuning in with me today. Laura J, namaste. Nama go for now. I love going on to platform